in the most darkest areas because I want that to be a reference point for everything else. So I went in and I went into the dark areas in the ears, dark areas of the eyes. Um, that way I know everything else should be lighter than these areas. I mean, they say you should start lighter and you could always get gradually darker because it's harder to erase and take away. But just for me, because it's obvious where all the darker areas are first, it's just easier to start coloring in and placing those down. Now notice how when I'm coloring too, I'm trying to color in the direction that the hair would grow. It gives it a little bit more realistic look, and it shows like the contours and the shaping of the face. So if I were to have done this like back and forth, side to side, it would kind of flatten the features of the dog, and it would be a little messier. So I try to pay attention to the direction in which I'm coloring in, so it flows with the actual textures and shapes of the animal. Think symmetry. Whatever you do on one side, you're going to do a reflection of it on the other. You know, unless the animal obviously has a different color on that side of the face, but I'm talking about the direction of the shading and the lines that I'm creating. So here, I think I need to make his muzzle a little bit bigger. Here's his dark cheeks. I'm also using the side of the pencil. It's giving me a broader pencil stroke, which is helping me to cover the area a lot faster. So I'm trying to get this kind of really thin triangle shape with this black area here. Also going around in circles, trying not to get too many lines. All right, so I know back here we have his shoulders super dark. And then his side, the side of his like little belly. This is super dark here. I'm gonna go a little darker. All right, his nose is definitely another dark area, but before I get to that, I kind of want to make like the ears match, kind of like how I made the eyes match. I want to keep everything sort of balanced as I continue. So these like little folds of dark areas in the skin there over the ear. Now I noticed that I made the ear a little lower than the eyes. I'm going to fix that now. Should be a little higher there. Always compare. I'm always looking back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. When you're drawing, it's 50-50. You have to pay attention to what you're seeing, what you're trying to draw, and what you're actually drawing. If you're spending all your time just looking at your picture, you're going to be drawing from memory. And you know, unless you have memory like an elephant and you have picture perfect memory where you can remember things exactly, then it's going to be a little bit more difficult for you to translate what you see over. You know, I have been practicing art for a very long time, and I still need my visual references. They are my guide. I feel like sometimes when you step away and you like blur your eyes, it's really helpful in helping you see everything. Okay, so I know I have to shade this more. These areas are too light, but I'm going to work on the nose because that's also another really dark area that I want to get in before I finish everything else. The nose has a little bit of a highlight here. I know you can't really see because that line is over it, so I want to keep this area fairly light. I might have to look at the picture of him on the screen, so I have, oh no, I have that extra photo that I printed. Can use that. Let's see. All right, yeah, so there is a highlight here. Probably not a good idea to do that line super dark, but the front of the nose, that is like the super darkest. So like this area right here and the crease. So I'm gonna darken that in. And it's got like this kind of mushroom shape. So this area, it's coming to life. I'm really liking it so far. So this is all looking the same. I want to darken my darker areas. Some of you might have a style that's completely different than mine. I get it. I just want you to really try your best at getting the proportions and, you know, the little subtle details that are there. And your drawing's going to be totally different than mine because you're doing a different animal. So, you know, do a little bit each day, take a break from it, come back to it. This is not something I expect you to do all in one sitting unless you feel like you're in a groove. Sometimes it's really hard to find a nice groove and you don't want to let that go. So definitely, you know, if you're feeling super stressed, then take a break. You have plenty of time to work on this. 2 weeks. I noticed that the front of the face here is a lot darker where the forehead starts to go up. So I need to darken that in a lot more. I might even have to darken in the eyes a little bit more. If I lose the highlights, I can always go back and erase them out. You get all of this on your hand and it smudges all over your picture. One thing you can do is you can turn your work around to prevent that from happening. Also, drawing upside down is another technique a lot of artists use to help them simplify what they're drawing. It's just another angle to view their work in. That way they're not stuck with seeing the same thing. It kind of gives you a good change. You pick up on things that you didn't really notice before, like I'm doing right now. Or you can, to also avoid the smudging, you could put a piece of scrap paper underneath to avoid it from messing up all of your shading. I feel like I need to work on this area again because my shading got too smudged and like it lost a little bit of its definition. All right, so yeah, I'm coloring in really straight or shading in really straight lines, but I'm cross hatching it and going over in circles. That way it softens those lines and they're not as linear. All right, so like this isn't as bright as like this patch of fur, so I need to give it a slight shade. Just subtle, subtle shading. I'm not even going to make it too specific, just a little shadow under there just to show that his face is hovering over his body. I'm pretty happy with it at this point. I mean, I could always spend more time and add more details, but for the most part, I think you guys can see, you know, it doesn't have to be 100% photorealistic. You just want the proportions, meaning the size and scale of things to be similar to the pet's photo. You want their features to be placed in the right area. You want to take your time and keep it neat, as neat as you can. It could be a little loose. All right, so from here, what I could do, I could call it quits. I can say, oh, I like it the way it is. It's perfect. I don't want to do any more. Or you can add your own little flair to it. All right, so we still have to add the name and the adoption number. So I'm going to do that now. Like, if you want, you can design a dog tag with that information on there. You can write it in nicely on the edges, on the side. You can do something really cool and fancy with their name. Don't forget to add their adoption number. I think I'm going to hide it in one of the bones. 86911. All right, so from here you could leave it like that, or you can go ahead and add any color if you like,